But we found that by updating our website and keeping that information current, we were able to effectively communicate with the public. We do have high school campuses on our college, 2 or 3 college campuses, and we're trying to get memorandums of understanding with them, but we're going to send a few of the different systems we have, messages if there's a situation on campus to the faculty, to the administrators of those high schools. But we're not going to send it to the students because then the parents become involved. And these are very small campuses with maybe 100 to 200 students, but we don't want to be the switchboard basically for parents that are concerned about coming onto our campus and you know, basically disrupting things as law enforcement and the safety people are trying to get things squared away. So there's a lot of technologies that are out there available at your fingertips if you have the right amount of money. Mass notification vendors, and this is focused on the higher ed. These are the people we've dealt with in the last 2 years. Blackboard bought a company called NTI, which was the predominant vendor in the K-12 market, and they have thousands of customers. 3N is the one we went with. 3N is the one that the Virginia Tech chose, and we went with them for a number of reasons, but it was easy to market to our board when they funded it in that they all knew about Virginia Tech, and this was the vendor Virginia Tech chose. AlertU is one that many community colleges in California are using. It's a free text service. They have a relationship, I believe, with the state chancellor's office, somewhere at the state level where they provide this to all the community colleges for free, but it only does text messaging. Blackboard NTI, Blackboard, it's now called ConnectEd, and 3N are both multimodal systems. EduCampus has been around for a while. They have dozens of higher ed sites as well, and they're a multimodal system as well. And Ray Wireless, I usually get weekly emails from them. Now I get daily emails from them about their wonderful system. They've got something going on in North Carolina with the university system there, and so they seem to be good in marketing their technology. They all claim to be the best. You're going to get the brochures. We have superior data centers. We have superior this or that, but all of them seem to have the same types of technology: text messaging, voice messaging, and the ability to do mass emails and things like that. Again, we received dozens and dozens of phone calls and brochures. Some of the vendors have come and gone already. We do know some of our colleagues have tried homegrown systems. We use Banner software, which is our student information system, and our finance and payroll and HR system. And there's a capability within Banner where you can do a mass email. And one of our counterparts tried that. And the emails, it worked. They already had the student email on file, and they sent out the mass emails. And from the time they started to the time it completed, for the 14,000 students they did, it took 8 hours to get all the messages out. So in a real-time situation, it's not very effective using your homegrown email system. So the nice thing about the vendors' solutions are that they're scaled to do millions of messages in an hour versus your systems maybe can do thousands. So you have to take that into account if you're going to get creative and do your own thing. That may be an issue. Some of the challenges, data collection. According to Campus Safety Magazine, a typical university does opt-in, where they'll ask students, can you provide the information, please, and we'll notify you of an emergency. And the typical average is between 35 and 40%, depending on which survey you look at. We decided to go with an opt-out model, and we tied it to registration. So we modified our Banner software to the first thing it asks, the first time they go to register for a semester, it asks them to either give us their information if they're a new student or update their current information. So we ask for their cell phone and their voice phone if they so choose. The cell phone would be for text messaging, and then provide another number. It could be their cell phone or their home phone or even their office phone where we'll send a voice message. And we've had a 90% opt-in rate, or people that did not opt out. So 10% have opted out, the other 90% actually gave us their information. And of those, we've only had a few that were students that put in like 911 as their phone number, things like that. But the system we use with 3N, it filters all that out for us when we do the upload. So we've had good success. We've also had about 90% of our employees sign up as well. So data collection certainly can be a challenge, but in talking to vendors and talking to some references, this was something that you need to focus on up front. Otherwise, if you have a mass notification system, you don't have their contact information, it doesn't do you much good. Training, we're hoping we don't use the mass notification system very often, and so far, since we went live, we have not used it. We're doing a full live test next month, one at each campus as part of a table talk exercise. But the problem with something you don't use very often is you forget how to use it, even if you have written instructions. So what we don't want to do is plaster the written instructions all over campus, because there's only a handful of people that we want to be able to access the system. And there's security in the 3N system in place to prevent that. But the staff we trained, we're now setting up quarterly training and refresh sessions. And how do you update the website? How do you send an all-user email message out? Things they already know or have done before, but we just keep having to reinforce that. so that it's fresh in their minds, and keep updating the documentation. All the people in the different emergency response teams at each campus have a flash drive with the encrypted file that has all their information and instructions on what to do, and we're having to update that as we go. So when you start doing anything on campus that involves sound, there's ADA and accessibility issues potentially. If you update your website with information, it has to be Section 508 compatible, part of the Rehabilitation Act of '96, and there was an addendum to that, to where you have to make sure it's, a screen reader can read it. So anything that's web-based has to be Section 508 compliant. And ADA, any kind of speaker system. Another consulting group that we're working with, PlanNet, and they're here as well today, they actually checked with Washington, D.C. with the office that oversees the American with Disabilities Act enforcement. And we did get a sort of ruling from them that, you know, with fire systems, you have to have the strobe lights along with the alarm so that someone who cannot hear can see that there's a fire alarm going on. But mass notification being a new area, it's something that has not been addressed. So they gave our consultant multiple paragraphs about it's probably a good practice to do so, but there's nothing in the law that says you have to do that. So part of the speaker design we're doing is, since we're putting a lot of video surveillance cameras and wireless access points in anyway, we're having our wiring and cabling vendor install the cabling necessary to put strobe lights on our campuses. And it won't be 100% coverage. We'd have to have one on every wall in every direction. That'd be cost prohibitive, but we have decided to, in the areas where there's high traffic, have strobe lights. So those that are hearing impaired can go about their business. When they see the lights flash, they'll know that, again, turn their phones on. Those that are hearing impaired, we work closely with the offices in each of our campuses that work with disabilities and students with special needs, is that students that are hearing impaired live off their text messaging, and that's how they communicate with people all the time. So they feel comfortable that what we're doing with the strobe lights in the high traffic areas, plus the ability to send text messages, the students will definitely get the text messages. And so they'll know that there's an incident as the strobe lights are going off of what it's all about. So we feel like based on the experts we already have on campus, it will be ADA compliant with that. And of course, nowadays funding is always a challenge. As I mentioned, there's some services that don't cost anything, but they're limited in what they can do. We timed it, this wasn't planned, but we timed it right. When we went before our board with funding, it was about, we went to our board 3 months after Virginia Tech just saying what we were thinking of doing. We went back after 6 months with some very round numbers, and we started at about $200,000 or $300,000. And when we went with our final plan forward, it was like $1.9 million to do all the different safety initiatives. And our bosses, my bosses over finance, she had already kind of pulled the board, knew that they'd be very receptive to it. And at the time, this was before the California economic and the U.S. economic meltdown occurred, and the budget situation came into play, that we happened to have sufficient excess reserves at the time, unallocated reserves to fund the projects. And you know, our board of trustees are elected officials. They're very sensitive to the safety of the students. They felt it was a very, very high priority, so they funded all the projects that we requested money for. But in today's economic climate, even with the elected officials and others that would want to address safety, certainly funding is going to be an issue for any initiative you might have. That's it. Thank you, and I'll be available for questions either here or later.
As Peter mentioned, I guess I would be one of the salespeople in the group that Peter mentioned earlier, because these are some of the technical experts here. As a communications director, public information, messaging, imaging, that is hopefully my specialty and forte, and I'll get into a little bit of that in just a second. Art touched on some of that. One of the important differences we all, I think, in this room know and must communicate to the people we work for and work with is the difference between the public information and the public alert and warning. They're merged together, but they still need to be separate, and I'll touch on that in just a little moment, just a bit. I thought I'd start with a little update on the merger between the former Governor's Office of Homeland Security and the Governor's Office of Emergency Services. As you know, the bill passed last year. The governor signed the measure, AB 38, in September, and on January 1st, we became the California Emergency Management Agency, and we're still trying to figure out if we're going to be called CalEMA or CalEMA, and I'll take your input afterwards to find out what you prefer. The basic goal from the governor on down through Secretary Bettenhausen and Undersecretary Frank McCarthy.